You know, that happens in human adolescence too. You find out your parents aren't what you thought they were. Okay, it's a two-sided thing. I mean, you think your parents are dumber than they are, but at the same time, they aren't what you thought they were as kids. As kids, you expected your parents to be perfect and have no problems. Well, as kids, we expect the Bible to have no problems. But you know what? It's in a lot of pieces. It's been argued about. There are all kinds of problems in studying Bible, and you got to learn that sooner or later, just like you got to learn that your parents are human. Okay, the Bible really is perfect and inerrant, but in order to find that out, you have to go through all the learning about what it really is, the fact that it's in pieces, that some of the manuscripts are corrupted, but others are not, that you have to study it in the original languages because all the translations are corrupt. You have to learn all those things, and they're pretty shocking to the adolescent. So most people don't weather childhood and get up to adolescence. So assuming that you do, well, let's first talk about if you don't. If you don't weather this phase, what will happen is that you will become an intellectual legalist rather than just an emotional legalist. You will become stubborn. You will, the ultimate sign of retardation is that when you hear or read something, especially if it's Bible, when you read it or hear it, you actually reverse the meaning that's in the text, or you reverse what somebody's saying. My pastor likes to call that reverse process reversionism, and it's the final stage of immature regression. This is what happens if you retard in the spiritual life. It's very serious. You can literally die of it. So prickliness, legalism, stubbornness, especially if it's intellectual, are the signs of a spiritual adolescent who did not grow out of adolescence, because it's in adolescence that the intellectuality really begins, and it's where you retard if you're not growing out of it. So if you think you see these signs in yourself, all you have to do is use 1 John 1:9 and say, you know what? I got to get serious about doctrine. Because usually the retard is not using 1 John 1:9 and will think he doesn't need it. So if this is a wake-up call, that's what you need to do. Just use 1 John 1:9, keep using it, keep using it, keep using it, and keep asking God, okay, I screwed up. Now what? And he'll show you. Okay, that covers the overview of the stage and how you have to grow out of it. Now let's look at the latter two sets of boxes, spiritual maturation benchmarks and the seventh facet of the house of thinking. We're now looking at spiritual maturation benchmarks. You will notice a huge change in adolescence versus childhood. Consuming Bible class is regularly attended. Not only that, but the spiritual adolescent ponders the meaning after class, and sometimes even when not in it, without any kind of external impetus. In other words, there's not somebody telling him to think about Bible. He's doing it on his own. His interest and his grasp are much higher than it was as a child, and he's losing the emotional attachment. Instead, he's shifted, again, the hallmark characteristic is a shift to intellectuality. He shifted to wanting to understand the content and meaning for itself. And so now his grasp of the Bible is beginning. Spiritual skills. As you can see, all the spiritual skills of childhood are colored in now. He has those as habits. They are becoming very rapidly instinctive to him. They are still basic, but there's better to good coordination beginning. In other words, he doesn't have to stop and review what does the word God mean, omniscience, omnipotence, omnipotence, truth, veracity, justice, righteousness. Those things just automatically come to mind when he hears God now. And the other thing that's really a hallmark characteristic of the adolescent is he begins to seek isolation to study the Bible and think about it more. So now we get to the third sub-box within the spiritual maturation benchmarks. These are all, again, behavioral. His thought pattern has begun to be what the Bible likes to call the word hope. It's the Greek word elpis, and it doesn't really mean hope. It means confident expectation. Socrates uses it that way in the Philebus. My pastor spent a lot of time on that. It's in 1 Corinthians 13:13, I think. It'll be on the screen if I'm wrong about the meaning. That word hope is really a hallmark characteristic also of the spiritual adolescent. The whole issue to the adolescent is, what does the word mean? And the meaning itself begins to give him a confidence. All right? He begins to be confident in himself because he begins to be confident in the meaning of the word. And that's what starts in spiritual adolescence. It becomes a quest for content. It becomes a quest for meaning, which becomes a quest for what does the word actually say versus how it makes you feel when it says what it says. And the adolescent is therefore beginning to have hope, meaning confidence. Not hope like in English, I hope so. You know, the English hope is where there's doubt. There's no doubt in the Greek word elpis. None at all. It's just that it's something future you haven't gotten yet, but you're confident it'll happen. Just like I'm confident that Christmas Day is going to come, all right, at the end of the year. So also you're confident, you begin to be confident that the Bible is what it says it means. So the word begins to have more meaning than feeling. It begins to coalesce in the mind. And he's still talking to God. The prayer thing is going on. I mean, again, that's your nuclear weapon of spiritual growth, talking to God all the time. And it notches up because he starts to say to God, God, what does this mean? You know, he's reading John 3:16. He wants to know more about what it means and why it means. And he's talking to God directly when he's not in Bible class. He's talking to God directly. He's asking God about the meaning, the relationship with God, as you're going to be seeing in the seven-faceted house, is becoming a whole lot more intimate. Habitual and intimate talking to God about everything. Okay? As a result, the he, God, begins to replace the me. Why? Because he's looking outside. That's grace orientation, doctrinal orientation for you. Coalescing. So as a result, of course, his relationship with God, it's still touchy and feely, but now it's more about the content. Okay? So what happens is he begins to question all of his old ideas. There's the retooling. Okay? He's questioning the do's. As a child, you know, it was do this, do that, you know, pin the tail on the donkey kind of Christianity where they make little stars and they memorize the names of the patriarchs and all that good stuff. And you walk around and go to houses and give them presents and stuff like that, or whatever it is your version of your church has as its dues. You begin, in adolescence, you begin to query, to question whether those dues are really spirituality, because of course they're not. They're condimental. They're ketchup. They're dessert. Okay, so he begins to question whether morality is spirituality, because after all, the unbeliever is moral. Most unbelievers are moral. So he begins to question, well, you know, if morality is spirituality, then why don't unbelievers, you know, unbelievers can do that? Yeah, because morality is not spirituality. So he's beginning to find that out. It's kind of tumultuous, especially if he has legalistic parents. He's beginning to find out that it's not what he thought it was. Again, emotions is spirituality. That's touted for children. Okay, but it's not spirituality. But that's all that the child knows. But the adolescent begins to question it, and rightly so. As a result, his judgmentalism is going to zigzag to being very ticked off that what he thought Christianity was isn't, to realizing, hey, wait a minute, it's much more and better than this, and he starts to relax.